A new policy bill was passed in the House that could force federal agencies to start paying their employees more. I'm going to talk about how this bill impacts a lot of federal employees. First, the Veteran Affairs are being required to do locality pay studies to ensure their healthcare professionals are being paid at a competitive level when compared to the private sector. This has not been done in the past. Years have gone by without studies like this being conducted, which resulted in a lot of doctors, nurses, those type of professionals not getting paid anywhere near the salaries of the private sector employees. So this can result in a lot of government employees that work for the VA that are in these healthcare type positions to see an increase in their salary in the upcoming year. Next, the TSA was trying to gain access to the GS pay scale. Now, the TSA was formed right after September 11th, right? Anybody who's flown in the airport, you've come in contact with TSA employees. Their pay is not the same as the GS pay for most government employees. Now you have the wage grade employees and the employees that work in the federal wage grade system. Those individuals are also trying to get access to the GS pay scale. And same thing with the post office. They're trying to get access. Most people want to be on that pay scale because the GS pay scale a lot of times has higher salaries and it's more predictable. But because 70% of the government makes up GS employees, most people just assume when you're talking about a government worker, if you're talking about a government employee, they just assume they're going to be GS grade. And that's not true. They could be a WG, they could be a post office worker, or they could work for the TSA. Now the TSA, their pay has not kept track at all with the GS pay scale. So as a result, they're having retention issues, right? They're having morale issues because they're considered government employees, but they don't feel like it because they're not being compensated the same way. Next is the DoD is removing the 2-year probationary period when it comes to a lot of their new hires. If you didn't know this, most government employees, when they first get into the government, they have a 12-month probationary period. This is the time where you really have to watch your conduct and your behavior on the job because you're an at-will employee. When you're a probationary employee, a lot of times they consider you at will. They do not need a reason to terminate you. So the 12-month probationary period was standard with pretty much all of the federal agencies to include the DoD. But what DoD did recently was include a 24-month probationary period, which would give managers a longer time to evaluate and assess the new employees to decide whether they're a good fit for the team. So they were asked to prove how effective is it? How effective is it to have it from 12 months to 24 months? Turns out it wasn't that effective at all. So now they're dropping the requirement back down to 12 months. If you are including DoD as an agency you would like to work for, DoD does a lot of support with the military. So it's attractive to people that either are familiar with the military, maybe they served a few years and they come out. Understand that at DoD, most of what you're doing is supporting them. So military service members, they don't stick with a normal Monday to Friday schedule, right? A lot of times it can go into Saturday and Sunday. A lot of times they work longer than 8 or 10 hours a day. So you want to consider that. I'm not saying that every DoD position is going to be like that, but if you're comparing it to something like Department of Justice or Department of Agriculture and you're looking at DoD, you could end up having a little bit more of an unpredictable work schedule if you end up getting a DoD job. Same thing applies to the Department of Homeland Security because the Coast Guard falls underneath there, Border Patrol falls underneath there. So you really just have to have an understanding of the culture of the agency, not just the agency, but kind of the office underneath that agency that you're going into. Next up is that there were efforts to prevent Schedule F classification in the future. Now, if you didn't know, in the last administration, they came up with a classification called Schedule F. And this removes a lot of the government protections that employees currently have. This was only meant to apply to about 50,000 government employees that dealt with policy. But this would essentially turn them into at-will employees also. The main reason for this is so that they're easier to terminate. And the thoughts behind it is that if you have low-performing employees, you can get rid of them sooner. So it allows the agency to expedite their hiring process and become more of an agile organization. Obviously, a lot of workers were not a fan of this. They want to have a performance improvement plan. They want to be given a chance to meet expectations and not have to worry on a day-to-day basis if their job is going to be cut. So the overall idea was to input language into this bill to make it impossible for another administration to include a Schedule F or similar classification. This would be done to protect the government employees, and it wasn't able to get into the bill. Now, I think a lot of people's big question is, what is the pay raise going to look like for 2024? Are we going to see another 4%, 5% pay raise, or will it be greater? Will it be something closer to what the rate of inflation is? This is usually discussed in the first half of the year. Usually April or May, we'll start to hear what the percentage will probably end up being. The highest pay raise that government workers ever experienced was 10.9%, and that was back in 1979. That was the only time where the pay raise was actually in double digits. All right, so if you still don't have a government job, or maybe you want to apply to a better government job, I want to share with you the 8 steps to attaining a government job, and you can learn about it if you watch this video next. If you would like to see more videos like this, please click the like button and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.